9 clothes. Expensive clothes are a waste of money. Meryl Streep. Oh, not another meeting. The new head of sales bores me. Wow, look at you. You're dressed gorgeous tonight. Well, this jacket looks nicer than the last one, but the last one was cheaper and a better fit. I think I prefer the first one. It's the trendiest and the most comfortable. 9 clothes. Where do you like to shop for clothes? Do you have a favorite item of clothing? Where did you get the clothes you're wearing now? Have you ever bought something quite expensive, but only worn it once or twice? What kind of clothes suit you? Do you like to wear bright and colorful clothes? Can you judge someone by the clothes that they wear? Is there a dress code at your workplace? Do you ever buy clothes online? What is something that you would never wear? 10 controversial opinions. If an individual wants to be a leader and isn't controversial, that means he never stood for anything. Richard Nixon. I think soft drugs should be legalized, and as a result many prisoners could be released from jail. No, I don't agree. Anti-drug laws must be tightened, or there will be chaos in the streets. 10 controversial opinions. Cigarettes should be banned. Cannabis should be legalized. The internet should be regulated to protect children. Nobody should be allowed to earn more than $1 million a year. English grammar is not important as long as people understand you. National service should be introduced or abolished. Keeping animals in zoos is cruel. Children should learn about sex at school. Pirating movies and music isn't a big deal. Old or sick people should have the right to take their own lives. 11 current affairs. People everywhere confuse what they read in newspapers with news. A.J. Liebling. Clark said that he expected to see the economy improve and hoped to have some good news to announce soon. He promised that he would do all that he could to improve the job situation. 11 current affairs. Do you think it's important to stay up to date with current affairs? In your opinion, which are the best and worst newspapers? How do you get your news? What's the biggest story in the news at the moment? Do you think there will still be newspapers in 5 years? What annoys you about news reporting in your country? Have you ever been in a newspaper? What would you like to see more of in the news? What would you like to see less of in the news? What headline do you wish you could see one day? 12 eating out. When you go to a restaurant, the less you know about what happens in the kitchen, the more you enjoy your meal. Jeffrey Wright. 12 eating out. How often do you eat out? How often do you get takeaway food? What's your favorite restaurant? How much do you usually tip? Have you ever worked in a restaurant? Do you prefer home-cooked food or restaurant food? What's your favorite dish? Do you usually have a starter and a dessert when you eat out? Have you ever eaten in a very expensive restaurant? When you eat in a restaurant, do you try something new or something you know you like? 13. The environment. A nation that destroys its soils destroys itself. Forests are the lungs of our land, purifying the air and giving fresh strength to our people. Franklin D. Roosevelt. In my opinion, most people aren't doing enough to reduce the amount of energy they use. They also use too much water and buy too many things that they don't really need. 13. The environment. What do you recycle? How worried are you about global warming? How do you try to save energy? Have environmental concerns changed the way you travel? Are you worried that we might run out of oil sometime soon? How do environmental concerns influence what you buy? What technologies could help to solve some environmental problems? What do you think future generations will think about how we treat the environment today? What do you think about nuclear power? Have you noticed changes in the climate in your lifetime? 4. Fame. In the future, everybody will be world famous for 15 minutes. Andy Warhol. I've never met anyone really famous. The most famous person I've spoken to is my cousin Joe. He plays guitar in a rock band. They were on TV once. I've never been on TV, have you? 14. Fame. Who is the most famous person you've met or seen? Who is the most famous person in the world? Who is the most famous person from your country? What would you like to be famous for? What are the downsides of being famous? What are the benefits of being famous? If you could have dinner or a drink with any living person, who would you choose? Which famous people living today might still be remembered in 100 years? If you were rich and famous, how would you spend your time? Which famous person would you be happy never to see again? 15. Food. It's easy for Americans to forget that the food they eat doesn't magically appear on a supermarket shelf. Christopher Dodd. Mixed up vocabulary. Nosuitio. Adjective. 15. Food. Are you a fussy eater? Do you care where the food you eat comes from? What national dishes from your country would you recommend? What do you think of genetically modified, GM? Food. Have to sleep. What would you do with the extra time? What's your favorite piece of clothing you own or owned? What hobby would you get into if time and money weren't an issue? What would your perfect room look like? How often do you play sports? What fictional place would you most like to go? What job would you be terrible at? When was the last time you climbed a tree? If you could turn any activity into an Olympic sport, what would you have a good chance at winning medal for? What is the most annoying habit that other people have? What job do you think you'd be really good at? What skill would you like to master? What would be the most amazing adventure to go on? If you had unlimited funds to build a house that you would live in for the rest of your life, what would the finished house be like? What's your favorite drink? What state or country do you never want to go back to? What songs have you completely memorized? What game or movie universe would you most like to live in? What do you consider to be your best find? Are you usually early or late? What pets did you have while you were growing up? When people come to you for help, what do they usually want help with? What takes up too much of your time? What do you wish you knew more about? What would be your first question after waking up from being cryogenically frozen for 100 years? What are some small things that make your day better? Who's your go-to band or artist when you can't decide on something to listen to? What's the best way to start the day? What shows are you into? What TV channel doesn't exist but really should? Who has impressed you most with what they've accomplished? What age do you wish you could permanently be? What TV show or movie do you refuse to watch? What would be your ideal way to spend the weekend? What is something that is considered a luxury, but you don't think you could live without? What's your claim to fame? What's something you like to do the old-fashioned way? What's your favorite genre of book or movie? How often do you people watch? What have you only recently formed an opinion about? What's the best single day on the calendar? What are you interested in that most people haven't heard of? How do you relax after a hard day of work? What was the best book or series that you've ever read? What's the farthest you've ever been from home? What is the most heartwarming thing you've ever seen? What is the most annoying question that people ask you? What could you give a 40-minute presentation on with absolutely no preparation? If you were dictator of a small island nation, what crazy dictator stuff would you do? What is something you think everyone should do at least once in their lives? Would you rather go hang gliding or whitewater rafting? What's your dream car? What's worth spending more on to get the best? What is something that a ton of people are obsessed with but you just don't get the point of? What are you most looking forward to in the next 10 years? Where is the most interesting place you've been? What's something you've been meaning to try, but just haven't gotten around to it? What's the best thing that happened to you last week? What piece of entertainment do you wish you could erase from your mind so that you could experience for the first time again? If all jobs had the same pay and hours, what job would you like to have? What amazing thing did you do that no one was around to see? How different was your life 1 year ago? What quirks do you have? What would you rate 10 or 10? What fad or trend do you hope comes back? What's the most interesting piece of art you've seen? What kind of art do you enjoy most? What do you hope never changes? What city would you most like to live in? What movie title best describes your life? Why did you decide to do the work you are doing now? What's the best way a person can spend their time? If you suddenly became a master at woodworking, what would you make? Where is the most relaxing place you've ever been? What is the luckiest thing that has happened to you? Where would you rather be from? What are some things you've had to unlearn? What are you looking forward to in the coming months? What website do you visit most often? What one thing do you really want, but can't afford? Where do do you usually go when you have time off? Where would you spend all your time if you could? What is special about the place you grew up? What age do you want to live to? What are you most likely to become famous for? What are you absolutely determined to do? What is the most impressive thing you know how to do? What do you wish you knew more about? What question would you most like to know the answer to? Somewhat personal questions to get to know someone. What question can you ask to find out the most about a person? When was the last time you changed your opinion or belief about something major? What was the best compliment you've received? As the only human left on Earth, what would you do? Who inspires you to be better? What do you want your epitaph to be? What did you think you would grow out of but haven't? In what situation or place would you feel the most out of place in? What's the dumbest thing you've done that actually turned out pretty well? They say that everyone has a book in them. What would your book be about? What is something you will never do again? What do you spend the most time thinking about? What are some of the events in your life that made you who you are? What do you wish your brain was better at doing? There are two types of people in this world. What are the two types? What is the strangest thing you have come across? What is something you are certain you'll never experience? What dumb accomplishment are you most proud of? If you could make one rule that everyone had to follow, what rule would you make? What are you addicted to? What stereotype do you completely live up to? What is something you can never seem to finish? As you get older, what are you becoming more and more afraid of? What is one of your favorite smells? What would be the scariest monster you could imagine? What song or artist do you like, but rarely admit to liking? What would you do if you knew you were going to die in 1 hour? What book impacted you the most? If you had to change your name, what would you change it to? If life is a game, like some people say, what are some of the rules? Who is or was your most interesting friend? Have you ever given to any charities? What is something that your friends would consider so you? What risks are worth taking? What can you not get right, no matter how many times you try? If you could convince everyone in the world to do one thing at one point in time, what would that thing be? What do you take for granted? What would be some of the most annoying things about having yourself as a roommate? What's something you are self-conscious about? What personality trait do you value most, and which do you dislike the most? What small gesture from a stranger made a big impact on you? What gets you fired up? What challenging thing are you working through these days? What irrational fear do you have? What's the best and worst piece of advice you've ever received? If you had a clock that would count down to any one event of your choosing, what event would you want it to count down to? What makes a good life? What do you strongly suspect, but have no proof of? What's the last adventure you went on? When do you feel truly alive? What was the most memorable gift you've received? What chapters would you separate your autobiography into? What do you like most about your family? What do you hope your last words will be? What stat for your life would you most like to see? What are 3 of the most significant numbers in your life? What could you do with $2 million to impact the most amount of people? If you were put into solitary confinement for 6 months, what would you do to stay sane? What's something horrible that everyone should try at least once? What fact are you resigned to? Have you ever saved someone's life? What was some of the turning points in your life?